How's it going, everyone? Vlad here with SolusPLC.com, and today I've got a very interesting technical unboxing as well as tutorial video for you. And this video is going to be with regards to the Micro800 PLC series that are going to be running Connected Components Workbench, which is a different series of software than we've looked at in this channel as well as our videos on the website before. So the story behind this video is essentially about a month or so ago, I decided to go on eBay and purchase myself a Micro820 PLC. And what happened is that the PLC arrived fine and well, and the hardware was functioning. That being said, because of the firmware flash that I performed through a virtual machine, which is actually technically not completely incorrect, but it's something that has to do with bad USB drivers, my PLC ended up becoming a brick. That being said, I contacted Rockwell and they were able to essentially send me a replacement. So today we're going to be unboxing one of these Micro800 series PLCs. So this is actually a Micro850, but we will be unboxing a Micro830. We're going to be breaking the seal that you typically get on top of your Rockwell hardware when you purchase it first, and we're going to be looking inside the box. We're going to be connecting to the PLC. We're also going to flash the firmware. We're going to go online with Connected Components Workbench. So if you want to get into the software, this is going to be a really cool video for you guys to see. And for some of you who haven't seen an unboxing of some of the Rockwell hardware, which is on the expensive side, we're going to be doing that today. Without any further delay, let's get into it. That being said, before we dive into the technical portion of this tutorial, I do want to mention that we've completely redesigned SolusPLC.com for a much better user experience. The technical tutorials that you're used to reading are still found under the tutorial section, and you can browse and search through them in the search bar, or you can simply scroll down and view all of the tutorials available to you absolutely for free. The next thing that you have access to is the new forum. So we've completely redesigned this as well. And if you want to post a technical question or perhaps a job, a suggestion, or otherwise that's related to automation, controls, or otherwise, you can do so on the forum, and that's usually the best way to reach me. The next thing that we can also access, and the most important one, is that the 7-day free trial. So we've essentially redesigned the way we're selling some of our materials and courses. And if you're interested to give this a try, see if it's something that you'll enjoy, there's a 7-day free trial available, at which point you can decide to unsubscribe or continue with the subscription, which of course supports the channel as well as the community. All right, so here is the Micro830 PLC. As you can see on the box right there, you'll also notice that the factory seal from Rockwell is still solid. So we're going to be unboxing this PLC, and I'm going to be using the same screwdriver that I always point at things. We don't have the appropriate tools in this workshop, as you can see. And so the box comes apart really easily. We're going to find a user manual first and foremost. So here's the Micro830 16-point programmable controller. If you're curious, we're going to look at the catalog number on the PLC itself, but let's take it out since that's the most interesting part. You'll notice that most of the Rockwell parts, especially controllers, come with this sticker that's going to be on the top. And what the sticker does is essentially when you're going to be installing this inside of your panel, what happens is that electricians would typically drill the holes, for these screws, for example, and the electronics that are going to be above the PLC in certain cases. And what happens is that dust or debris just falls into the electronics and can cause damage, short circuits, and of course, render the controller unusable. So what they do is essentially put this white cover on top so that the PLC can be installed. And then you'll notice that the PLC needs to be screwed into the panel, and then it's going to be removed. That being said, you do have access to a DIN rail, so you don't necessarily need to use the mounting holes that you have on the top as well as the bottom of the PLC. And we're not going to be mounting this inside of the panel. This is going to be just going into my essentially educational kit. So I'm going to remove this right away. And let's look at some of the features that were covered by this sticker. So you'll notice immediately that the PLC has light indicators that are going to be power, run, fault, source, force, and common. You're also going to get status indicators directly on the PLC for the inputs as well as the outputs. And we've seen something similar on the MicroLogic series, although it has that on the integrated LCD display. And there are options for these microcontrollers to get that specific features. That being said, in terms of COM ports, we will have these covers that we can remove either with a screwdriver. They come off really easily. And essentially, I would recommend leaving them in place just for dust protection. But you do have an RS-232 or 485 port here at the top. Then you have a USB key. This is a standard printer USB that you can use and purchase. And last but not least, we do have the switch that you would find on most Rockwell controllers that are going to allow you to put it in run, remote, or program mode. And of course, once we start the program, we're going to put this in remote so that we can download the program and go online with the PLC and run the code. Now, very briefly, the PLC features very similar terminals that you would expect, that you would find on a MicroLogic series PLC, but it does feature a really cool capability, which is these removable terminal blocks that you can see here. And of course, these are just plastic covers, but what you can do is you can purchase additional IO, you can purchase high-speed counters and a few other modules that you can essentially plug in directly on top of this controller and configure in CCW in order to get additional inputs and outputs or features for the different line of controllers. Really quickly, I did want to bring in the Micro850. So the reason why the 850 might be a better choice for certain applications is because of this Ethernet port that you see here at the top. And I do recommend, of course, if you're going to put it on some kind of a network on a machine that's going to be talking to other devices, you do want Ethernet connectivity instead of going the RS-232 route, which is of course also a viable option. The other thing that you'll notice is that this controller also has the top modules, but the Micro850 series also features a way for you to add modules on the side. So I can remove this panel right here, and you'll notice that there's going to be a connection port at the back. So there's really a significant difference between the different lines of Micro800 series controllers, and they're going to be all listed on the website. And essentially, you do need to make a selection depending on what you need. The lower end controllers are of course going to cost a little bit less. The higher end controllers are going to have a lot more capability, but they will come at a higher price as expected. And last but not least, there will be certain features that you cannot find in every single controller. So I do recommend that you go through the guide that we have posted on solusplc.com. Let's get into the software. We're going to communicate over USB on this specific controller. So I'm going to plug in a USB cable into my computer port, and we're going to flash the firmware. Alright, so as you can see, we've got a 24 volt DC, essentially 110 to 24 volt DC power supply on the DIN rail next to the PLC, and we're sending 24 volts down to the bottom of the PLC, and a green indicator power light is indicating that everything is working fine. The PLC is also plugged in via USB to the computer that we're going to be using right now, and what we need to do first and foremost is to flash the firmware of the PLC. Now, the reason for that is that we're going to be using Connected Components Workbench, and the latest version of that specific software is version 12. Now, the PLC, the firmware of which we're going to find out shortly, is going to be version 10 based on the label on the box, and we'll see how to figure that out in RS Links. Now, first, I'm going to go into the Download Center and just showing you that you can type in Rockwell Download Center in Google search to find the right link. We're going to scroll down and find Drivers and Firmware. Click on that link right there. And here we're going to have to type in the name of the PLC. Now, there's two ways of doing this. So if you start typing in Micro800, you'll notice that there's going to be a very long list of different controllers that are going to be available to you. Now, of course, as I had mentioned, there's going to be different series of these Micro800 controllers. Now, we know that our specific controller is going to be the Micro830. That being said, it's still important to understand what specific model of that controller we're going to be using. And for that, we can tilt this controller on its side. Don't necessarily recommend doing that while it's powered on, but it's going to be 2080 LC30 16QWB, as you can see on the label. Going to place it back in its place. 16QWB, so that's right there. And as I had mentioned, we want version 12 of this firmware. Now this is free to download. If you just create an account, you can download this yourself. So we're going to select the firmware, click this little icon here, firmware for Micro800 version 12.011. We're going to click download, download now. I recommend always manage download. It's usually a more secure way of downloading Rockwell software. Save it into downloads. And then we're going to show in folder. And we can just double click the software that we've just downloaded. Once it extracts, we can click on open. And here you'll notice that I have a lot of different tools, but one of the softwares, and you can essentially sort by date modified in case you're not sure which one it has downloaded just now. You'll notice that we've downloaded a .dmk file. Now, how do we extract these DMK files and make them usable? The way to extract the DMK file is, first of all, you have to have ControlFLASH already installed, but you can type in the search DMK extraction tool. And as you can see, it appears all the way at the top. We're going to select that, press on yes. Once it launches, we can browse to the specific folder where this has been downloaded to. So it takes a little bit of time sometimes, but as you can see, it found the right firmware revision. We can say extract. And hopefully one succeeded. As you can see, everything worked as expected. I'm going to click on OK. We need to launch RSLinks, RSLinks Classic. And similarly to how we've done with Ethernet drivers, we need to use a USB driver to find the PLC that we've connected. Okay, so I'm going to just scroll this down a little bit. But what you will find is that when you plug in a PLC over USB, at least in the recent versions of RSLinks Classic, it's going to show up under its own tag, which is here USB. And let's see if we can expand this a little bit, because it's actually browsing PLC cards that had been plugged in the past. Let's see here. And it takes a few seconds. Sometimes it kind of lags a little bit and then it finds the PLCs. All right, so as you can see, it did find the right PLC. It also has some other things listed that I had worked with in the past. So here's the Micro800 2080 LC30 16QWB. What you can do is right click on that name, and once the menu appears, it should allow us to see the firmware revision of that PLC. So I'm going to go into device properties, and as I had mentioned, and according to the label, of course, we've got the 10.011, and you can verify, and I recommend if you're working on multiple PLCs, that the serial number matches what you've got on the label. Either way, we can close out of this, and what we're going to launch next, since we're able to see it there, we're going to type in Flash, ControlFLASH. There we go, ControlFLASH. So this is a tool that comes with most Rockwell installations. We're going to click Next. And I've showcased this before on some other PLCs. This essentially allows you to flash the firmware of the PLC. And other hardware like drives, servo motors, so on and so forth. So you'll notice that there's going to be quite a few PLCs on the Micro series that have been already pre-installed, and I've installed these libraries in the past, so it's not surprising. But we're going to select the 2080 LC30 16QWB as mentioned before and as displayed on the label. Scroll all the way down, go into USB. Just give it a few moments. It's going to load. You do want to be patient with the software. It should be able to expand here. All right, there we go. So Micro800, that's our PLC. And this tool is actually quite nice because if the PLC doesn't match what is going on with the hardware, then it's not going to let you flash. We're going to click OK. And you'll notice that the only revision that we can select is the 12.011. If you installed some of the other drivers from the Rockwell website, you'll see different or many other options as well. We're going to click Next. And you'll notice one last confirmation before you flash the firmware. This is going to erase the program. So if you're working with a PLC that's currently being used, I do recommend backing everything up. Current revision 10.011, new revision 12.011/A. Finish, and we're going to begin the firmware flash. Are you sure? Yes. So you'll notice on the PLC there's going to be a couple of LEDs that are going to turn on, flash a little bit. The USB is going to disconnect and then reconnect, which is the problem with the virtual machine sometimes. So we currently have a blinking fault, but that's normal because we are downloading the firmware to the PLC, transmitting update 2 out of 4. This should complete and go all the way up to 4, and then the PLC is going to verify that everything has been working correctly. It is going to reboot a couple of times. All right, so the firmware flash is complete. As you can see, we've got the new revision right here at the bottom, and everything is complete with a green background, which means that everything succeeded. We're going to click on OK, and we're going to cancel out. Now, in order to get Connected Components Workbench, you can go back to the same field or website that we've searched before and type in Connected Components Workbench. Here you'll find that there's going to be different tools that you can find, but essentially there's going to be a standard edition and then a developer edition. Now the free version, as the label indicates right here, is going to be the standard edition, which you can select here. And of course, we're going to be working with version 12. You can click on that same download button, and from here what you will need to select is the free download section. So Connected Components Workbench Standard Multiple Languages Edition version 12. Of course, you can get the manuals if you need that as well, and you can also download the ControlFLASH tool from here too. And you can click on download software or click on downloads, and you'll be able to download that tool and install it. Now I've already done so we're going to launch it and see if we can connect to our PLC. All right, so here we are in Connected Components Workbench, or CCW. We can create a new project by clicking on a new. We're going to name it project 4, which is just the default next project. Create. We're going to have to select the type of PLC that we're going to be using, which is of course the same part number that we've used for the firmware flash. Okay, so we're going to select from a series of controllers. This is a Micro800 16QWB. We're going to select it, version 12. Select, add to project, and this is going to create a blank project for our controller. Now from this menu, before we download to the controller, you can select some of the plugin modules that I've mentioned on top of the controller if you do have them installed, and you're going to right click and select one of the modules available here. And similarly for the second slot. Now you can also configure certain ports. You can configure the RTC, the real-time clock of the controller, the embedded I/O. I believe it's only going to show you a status, and you can enable certain features, but of course I do recommend that you read the manual before playing with any of these settings. Now in terms of programs, you'll notice that there's going to be nothing by default, so we're going to right click this, click on add, and then we're going to create a ladder diagram. We're not going to do anything intricate, but just we should have a local variable section as well as a program section in which we can start creating some code. So if I double click on this program, which of course we can rename accordingly, we'll see a familiar structure of a ladder logic diagram onto which you can bring in XIC instructions, you can bring in OT instructions. It's going to give you warnings, of course, since we have nothing selected. So let's just turn on an output. So I'm going to put in this direct coil, double click this, and digital output 0. We're going to remove that. We can add a second rung. and let's just put another OT, and we're going to turn on digital output 3, for example. All right, so now we can download the program, and there's going to be 2 buttons to do this. So if you navigate to the main page, you can hit this download button, and if you're in the program, you can just press on the download up here. So I'm going to press download. We should see the same window of RS links pop up. We're going to browse to our USB device, expand this, find the right PLC. There's no password. You can set a password on your PLC. We're going to press OK, and you'll notice that the PLC is going to take a few moments to download the program. And do remember that we are in program mode based on this little switch on the PLC. So it should take the program. Everything should be okay. The project will overwrite the current project. That is perfectly fine. Let's download. Once the download is complete, you'll notice 2 things. So first of all, we have been connected to the controller. So here there's going to be this connected label. And we're also seeing labels on the ladder that we've created. So for whatever reason, they become orange, which is inconsistent with the Studio 5000 software. But do note that whenever it's orange, it means it is energized. But remember that in this state, if we go back to the main page, our controller is still in program mode, so it's not running the current program. What I do need to do is I need to switch it to run mode, and then I'm going to put that back into remote. So you'll notice that in remote, of course, you can toggle it between run and program, and it is currently running the program. Hence the reason why that we have 2 outputs currently turned on, as we had programmed in the ladder logic, which are going to be the outputs 0 as well as 3. And if you go into the program, you'll notice that they are energized like so. And as I said, one thing that is a little bit different if you're just going to use the free version is that you're not going to be editing online. So what you can do here is disconnect, and you can make changes to your ladder logic. So for example, you can add XICs, XIOs, and any other like mathematical instructions, for example. So you can add a division block, for example, and then you will have to once again download to the controller before running the program. Now, the advantage, of course, is that these controllers come at a much lower cost, like I had mentioned before, than the Compact Logic series, and certainly than the Control Logic series. That being said, they're a bit less powerful, but they do work in standalone machines, and certain variations of the Micro800 series controllers can be used in fairly complex applications. So it's certainly a different tool to learn, but there are many advantages to using these controllers in the field. And do let me know if you guys have seen them used at your plant.